very fundamental sort of primal need for meaning from this objective reality, and how when you go beyond that, it just loosens up, and you actually meet things. I don't even want to say as they are. You just meet even this objective world without this sort of emotional filter. And that is what the wobble is all about. It's like, can we be naked of any of these concepts? And the mind will say, well, happens to your life, then how are you going to run? But the thing is that even if you look, you can't find any way in which we are running it. There's no device using which we are actually running life. This need to know even spirituality. So many come to satsang and they just feel like the day I have the ultimate experience or the ultimate concept or something which is still at the level of perception or concept. But is there something which is independent of these two things? The deeper knowing. And the fact is, and I feel completely okay to say this, that when we are not looking to know, the truth of what we are is just so apparent. But what happens is that we want to make a photocopy of it. Like, we come here to Buckingham Palace, we want to take so many photos, and we immediately like, what's happening? I'm doing that. So it's like this, that even the spiritual insights that we have, we then burden them with what we think it was, what we think we know, so that we can feel like, oh, once I make a concept or a memory out of it, then it's always available to me and I cannot lose it. But in a way, our pure perception just ceases at that moment where we start adding that layer of conceptualization on top. So I feel like it's only now that I'm fully understanding what Guruji means by naked. Because I still feel like if you were to tell me today, I would be okay completely trying to discard all the terminology we ever used in satsang. Because that can also become, and has also become for some Sangha members, like a conceptual framework of spirituality. This idea that, oh, this one knows it better because they are able to enumerate a certain set of concepts. But it's not that. It's not at that layer at all, that conceptual layer. It's so open beyond any sort of picture. It's funny, and I feel like I was not sharing like this earlier, but when I look back at some transcripts, it was somewhat like this. But it's so, this need to know, this need to find meaning, accompanies us even in our inquiry. In the sense like, okay, I'm going to start the inquiry, and now what is happening to me? It's like this sense of what am I discovering? So we carry that one around, we're waiting for like some sort of an experience, some sort of a thing. But what is there empty of that? We're not concerned, like we're not giving much importance to whether there is or not. Like I was saying in satsang the other day, what I'm saying right now to you is neither true nor false. Okay? Now what are you going to do with that? Because when we are listening, this is what happens. It's like this constant assertion or negation in a way. You see? So if I say what I'm saying is neither true or false, you can have like, oh yeah, that's true. No, but that's not what I said. It's not true. You see?
Yeah,
Even with this, yeah, it's like, yeah, that's true. Yeah. But it's neither true nor, oh, then that's false. But it's not. So this neutrality, this mind cannot really fathom. And I just want to say that it's possible to make life without putting this layer on top of it, without making this assertion or negation. Just what is. So I feel like these terms are deeply into me. What is ignorance? What is but I feel like I don't have the articulation for what I'm saying. Like even now, I'm hearing these words which are coming out of this mouth. But I don't feel like they're truly that sense of what the insight is. I just feel like after a while, and if it keeps going like this, I just feel like I won't be able to grapple with these concepts. It's just like if you come to satsang and say, I don't know, you don't know.
That's about it.
And in that there is true knowingness. But the terms get us in trouble. The know, to use the term know for both that knowing, this knowing, or this knowing. That also gets us in trouble. So like, do I know the true knowing? Is it? But it cannot be known because that which is truly known always is known anyway. Because the knowingness is
Everything else that complicates.
everything else seems to, like Ashtabhatra said, the mind is complex. The mind is complex.
It's not a knowing that can be attained. It's not a knowing that can be attained.
Exactly.
Mm.
Because it wouldn't have to be. It's like you're not trying to retain this breath. Because you know that it's always there, the breath. Like, you're not trying to hold on to the sense of sight because you know it's just there. And yet when we have an insight about the self, we feel like, oh, if I just capture it in my concepts, or I just like write it down, or make a benchmark, like a phenomenal benchmark of it, then I can just hold on to that. It's not about that, it's just like I said. What do you have to do to sit exactly where you're sitting right now? But to be the self is even more natural than that. At least sitting where you are, like, then you can be tired, like, you can do that. But the self is not tired. Just like,
You know what I've been kind of contemplating for at least the past year? That kind of sense, especially when the baby is there and like it takes a lot of the attention. That kind of sense of tiredness. Because like I don't feel like in a way like I feel very vital. But something else very tired. Something I'm like contemplating what the tiredness is. But it's just like some kind of hanging on to
the thing is, just what I'm really saying is that we cannot know, and yet we always know. Like even these things about what something is, we can make lots of conclusions about that, but all these conclusions are debatable. They're always debatable. Even the sages don't agree with any conclusion among themselves.
Yeah.
They never agree because what I'm saying about this neither true nor false actually applies to everything. Like we never can know with this device what anything actually is. With this device, it's like Alexa, you see, or Siri, cannot actually know what is. It's just giving answers. It's like, Alexa, where is this? It's here. But it doesn't actually know it. It's just programmed to give these answers. So even like conclusions of our deep contemplations, the contemplations for themselves are very beautiful in themselves. But we start just letting go of what the mind concludes of them.
Yeah.
Like, nobody can ever say what anything truly is, and yet everybody truly knows what everything is. Like, the isness always knows itself.
Yeah. Do you feel is it useful, the contemplation of something like this to then kind of unravel something and like come to deeper?
All this contemplation is very useful. But what I'm only suggesting is that we don't get attached to any conclusion of the contemplation, because then that can be in our basket.
Exactly. That's
conclusion. So
standpoint.
yeah. But because we cannot really, like, we claim to know what is for so much and why is for so much, but we don't actually know any of it. We don't know any of it. But there is a deeper knowingness which is just always present. Like, I don't know what a tree is. And yet, somewhere which is not at this layer, you see, it's completely known. Because it is I in a sense. It is not separate. Like, I don't know what is happening here. But if you give this to the mind, you'll say, this is very nice. We're sitting in a park and there are 7 8 of us. And so, you see, this is the photocopy version which can be stored up in our photo album. The thing is, do we really know what this is? We cannot know it like this. and yet it's kind of very primal. And as children, we've been taught to try and make sense of life in this way. Have a concept of it, give us the feeling that once I have the concept of it, I know it. But actually, you never know anything at all, truly. Even now, you could be hearing these words and am I getting what he's saying? But that's what I'm saying, that this, what is that? Just look at that sense of, am I really getting what he's saying? What is that? And what is it before that? I mean, what does the concept actually give to you? If you have a question, what does that give to you? It makes like a knot, and the answer then unknots that knot. But what is that stage before question or answer? And how did we get into this sort of paradigm of constantly trying to figure it out? What is our state before the figuring? Like babies, they're not saying what is this. He's not saying Mama what's this, and Mama is saying this is satsang. He doesn't have a need for that concept. There is no separation yet. But we put these concepts, and then with every concept comes this voice of this sense of separation, which is like, okay, then this is me, and this is other. This is London, and that is Bangalore. This is this, and that is that. But it's nothing. What is London? Is there a thing called London? Is it? Like, and you can look at any of this. Is there like a thing called man? There's no actual thing called man. It's just a collection of concepts like facial hair and anatomy of how a man is supposed to be. And so much violence is there in the world because of that. We have some who are gay and transgender in our Sangha. And there's so much violence the world afflicts on them because of this notion of man. There's actually nothing called man. It's just, do they think what is an animal? Man afflicts so much violence on creatures just because we have this idea of separation that I am man and that is animal. It's only possible because of these labels. Just like we use these, and it's become so primary to our conditioning to like try and know what this is. But what does that mean? This need for meaning, is it need for true meaning, or it's like the need for a me? It's like the need for
Mm.
in a sense it's like that. That the me cannot really has anything to hang its hat on unless it has at least one concept. I am this, or the world is this, or something which gives a definition. And this is why I'm saying that I find it more and more difficult to speak now because it's so undefinable. And I have noticed over the years that even things that I have said in satsang have been used as definitions. I have used them, and Sangha has used them as definitions of something which is undefinable. In the innocence of a child, this was not there. Like, we did this to our kids also, where we said, this is hand, this is head, this is nose. And then we would get upset with them, like, Kabir, where's your nose? If you do that, you're like, no, that is wrong. And this is so in this human play we played like this, where we've all passes on from generation to generation in a way, and if you believe in continuity of some sort, then it's many lifetimes of this sort of coming to the idea that, like, to put very simply, what I'm saying is that this, even the coming to satsang can feel like I'm coming here to know something.
Yes.
Is it? And what is he going to tell me? Is it that will give me greater clarity about life? Actually, I can't tell you anything which gives you greater clarity about life. But if I do say something which then have this sort of, if you have this idea left, and I say right, and that concept of left dissolves, then some natural, more clarity arises. Now, so this is how consciousness is playing with itself, feeling that playing with all these concepts in the delusion of playing with individuality, and then coming to the all there isness, undefinable all there isness, this dissolution of these concepts. It can happen like as a spiritual experience, in your meditation, you're sitting one day and it's like, okay. And you you can't really say what that was. It's just like some bag got put down or something. Or it could be anything. Just, what is the time where we will be most full of wonder? We need something that we're not, that the mind is not able to conceptualize yet. So, that moment where we are like, before consciousness starts to make something out of it, in a sense, then it's like beautiful. But I've been in these locations, as children and various places you go to, and you have this wonder, but in 5 minutes it's gone because you already like put it in a photo album.
Yes.
So, and there's nothing that can really be done about it, or can really be. It's not. I'm not speaking at that level at all. Like, I'm not speaking at the coconut. You were there, no? You're speaking about ocean and coconut, or that's out after. Okay, so these days I've just been saying that the ocean is having a true insight about itself, but because we get so used to identifying with a particular aspect of the ocean, like the coconut which is floating on top of the surface, you feel like, what must the coconut do now? You see, but I'm not speaking like that at all. What I'm saying to you is that, like, that head is nodding, this mouth is speaking. I truly can't find a way to say that this is my mouth and that is your head. It's just.
But so when I feel like the search for the truth isn't there anymore. Like, it's not this hunger, like I must know. It's just like so much easier now. And like hearing you speak like this, it's just like, yeah, it's just, as you say, mouth, hands, it's all just being moved by the same energy. Whatever. But in my day-to-day life, it's like, no, I am identified completely with this person, and I do think I am me, and Will is Will, and da-da-da. But when I look, it's instant, absolutely instant. It's not like if there's a me that's looking, it's just like there's a looking happening. It's not like I'm going to go and look and inquire. It's just like, no, just the words spring up in my mind, and the inquiry happens, and there's no me anymore. But there's no continuity in that, and that's okay too. That's just how it is, and that's all part of the one anyway. So it doesn't really. It just seems like there's so much more like freedom and relaxation in it all. But there's not that continuous open.
You need to know how it should be. You need to know it has to be this way and it has to be that way.
Yeah.
Because in that I find that, like, I have to say that many who come to satsang with me now are very tired. This is like very tired, and I don't want to tell them that something like because it's not true. Like, I don't want to tell them that you have to be more anything. You have to do the inquiry more, or you have to be more worthy, or you have to be more devoted, or something like this. Because if you really look at the tools we have, what are the tools we have? Like, if somebody says you have to be more devoted, I find no tool here which creates devotion. I don't have that machine.
Yeah.
You see, where is that? If I go to it and say, please, can I put some coins in? And can you please spit out some devotion? I find no such machine. You have to be more of anything. I don't find that these are actually available. So I don't want to burden my children with any this stuff.
Also, there's like this precedent of like if you meditate enough, if you devote enough, if you give up your worldly possessions, then maybe you'll get this golden egg. So maybe that is the end goal. Like maybe however we are right now is how it's exactly like the acceptance of that is so everything.
Acceptance is what does acceptance mean? It is the lack of avoidance. So lack of avoidance, I've seen truly happens as the empty of even the concept of what it is, because most times it is our notional idea of what it is that becomes the avoidance. You see? Like, to say that this is a nut, you see, is my avoidance of just what it is. You see? Because the minute I say it's a nut, I've put it in my basket of knowledge. You see, I said, I've defined it. See, I said this is nut. But actually, this is not definable in the 3 letters nut. You know, it's just like, I don't know. It can't actually truly make sense. Really, what I'm saying is there's some resonance. What I'm saying because if this we can see that we avoid with our labels, we avoid with our concept of it, even in our concept of we can say, oh, I'm accepting these nuts completely for what they are. Really? But as long as we still like have this idea that this is something, that this is that I am something and I am accepting this as something, see, then I'm talking about another sort of acceptance, which is not capturable as long as we are so caught up in our movie. Can we start walking? But we can,
Oh, this is probably not going to make any sense.
it's fine. I'm getting used to this, even what is coming out of this mouth.
Yeah. But like you're kind of talking about like not knowing anything, and I've heard that like idea like obviously for a long time, and I felt like I understood it, and you can kind of not know, but it does seem like there's nothing you can do to not know, and it seems like the not knowing somehow like just happens by itself. You can't, like, I think, I don't know, listening to you speaking, because I feel like you're speaking from there, it does kind of bring you deeper into that. So listening to someone like you speaking like that is obviously helpful. It's obviously helpful,
So
but
yeah,
it
see,
wasn't,
even
because
this
it did
cannot be
bring-
known. What you're actually
Yeah.
saying is that because what you said is a beautiful example of this, you see? And this is what I feel like we cannot, like, I will not be able to share satsang in this way because the first part completely neutralizes the second part, or the second part completely neutralizes the first part, and we just come back to this nakedness. You see? It's like we played with something, and just it's just you know what I'm saying. It's just,
So in a way I kind of said there's nothing you can do about
Yeah.
it, and there's nothing you can do
Yeah.
to not know. But yeah, like listening to someone
Exactly.
talking about not knowing, it does seem to have some effect. But I guess
because
it
even
has,
this is not actually known. Without
yeah.
we cannot have a position with regards to our knowing and not knowing. You see? Because that would be to know. You see, like
Yeah.
even to say, I just know now that I can't know anything. You see, this is like I know now that I can't know anything, but we don't know that also.
Like it seems like the only thing you can say is like it seems to be, or
seems to
something
be,
like,
yeah.
because you can see your own experience and you can kind of say it seems to be like that. But of course, that thing that seems to be, it seems to also keep changing all the time. Like the more time that goes by.
And when you start exploring what is the seems, like what is the seems, what does it mean to know what seems is? Like something seems. What is this? How could something seem? Yeah, it is like it makes us so naked. Like what is seeming? What is the seeming? Like we can say this is a great seeming, but you know what I mean? It's like seeming. Yeah, it's like when we start looking and we know that we've had so much we've heard even in satsang about all these terms like it's all a great seeming, and then you look and say, oh, what is seeming as what? What would a seeming be? You know, it's just like so. It's really completely deconstructive in a way. And the see, the thing is that we are, like even here there is so much conditioning because I want to end with that is so beautiful because, but I don't want to give that reassurance also now. You see, because then that also becomes like a knowing, and that's what gets us in trouble actually. But he said it's so beautiful. You know, you see? So it's just like what is the reassurance? It's also like in a sense like a knowing that I'm safe or I'm getting there. But what is that? You see, primarily which is too wobbly now, unless it gets a conclusion from the master or from someone saying. So we've been just having some fun like this to look in satsang and very different flavor. I just said after satsang one day, I said that nothing I'm going to say today after satsang is going to reassure you. Like, because it can be like, even our holiest concept, like the master is always taking care of us. But there's so much identity in that. It's beautiful. See, the condition is to say, to have that reassurance. But I don't want to say it. It's just like, the thing is that if that opposite thing is not said, then many times the mind takes up the opposite. Like if I'm saying that even a concept like the master always takes care of you is not needed, the mind then immediately can pick up the opposite one, which is like, oh, the master is not taking care of me. But I'm not saying that. This is like, this is neither true nor false, neither being nor not being, neither truth nor lie. This like this middle. What's in the middle? What's in the middle of our conclusion? Like this is good, this is bad, this is true, this is false, this is up, this is down, this is left, this is right. Everything I've said is false. Is it? Even this. Is it? In the sense, up and down has to make a relation for me, is it? Where I am limited to a particular position. So truly I don't find something like up and down. True, false, right, wrong, good, bad. We used to trouble ourselves in a way. I just feel like if there's a book 20 ever, that book 20 will be very different from book 1 in terms of the words.